information just as soon as we get it.
Well, President Bush is getting ready to share his new strategy for Iraq. One key part of that plan may be a troop surge with tens of thousands of additional U.S. forces temporarily deployed to Iraq. We have two guests to talk about that this morning. First, Lawrence Korb, a former Assistant Secretary of Defense, now with the Center for American Progress. Lawrence, great to see you.
Nice to be with you.
Let me get you on the record here. Where do you stand on this idea of a troop surge in Iraq?
It's absolutely the wrong thing. You don't need a military surge. You need a diplomatic surge. If you put more troops in there, as General Casey, the commander over there, said, it'll increase the Iraqis' dependence on us. It will give them less incentive to make the painful political compromises necessary to bring all of the factions together, and also increase American casualties.
Lawrence, if you don't do it now, if you don't surge now, you're in for a longer period of time. You're not asking to shorten the amount of time. You're going to lengthen the amount of time that U.S. forces are in country. So do it now. Surge. You can't get any political traction until you solve the security problem.
No, that's absolutely backwards. Until you could put a soldier or a Marine on every street corner in Baghdad, but until they begin the reconciliation process, it won't make any difference. The only leverage we have is to set a date to get out, which I would argue should be over the next 18 months, to give them the opportunity and the incentive to do what they need to do. This is no longer an insurgency. We're not fighting al-Qaeda. This is a civil war in which the parties have to come together. And we're not over there to referee a civil war.
Lawrence, deadlines are a recipe that essentially set up the government for failure.
No, absolutely not. I mean, you have a government. This government, you had an election over a year ago. They were supposed to be making these political compromises. They were supposed to be demanding the militias. They haven't done a darn thing. We already surged back in the fall. And what happened is more Americans died when we surged. The Iraqis were supposed to send 6 battalions into Baghdad along with the extra 7,000 American troops. Only 2 showed up. So when people say, well, you got to train them more, it's not a question of training. It's motivation. They're trained, but they don't have an Iraq that's worth fighting and dying for. And until they do that, it doesn't matter what you do.
So tell us again, what's the option? If you're not going to surge, what do you do?
Well, basically, you say that you are going to redeploy, keep your forces in the area in case you should have an invasion from Iran or Turkey. You also need a diplomatic surge in which you get all of the countries around there who are already involved, but you have to get them to coordinate their efforts, because none of them want to see a failed Iraq that becomes a destabilizing force. And until the United States sets a date certain, those countries are going to say, well, it's our problem. And in fact, General Casey said, we put more troops in, the Iraqis will blame us for what's going on.
It's hard to imagine that Syria and Iran are going to be helpful. Tell us why.
Well, I'll tell you why they're going to be helpful, because they don't want, among other things, millions of refugees streaming into their country if Iraq should become a failed state. The Iranians, who are Shias, do not want to see it become a haven for al-Qaeda, which is a Sunni group. Look, their foreign policy is not compatible with ours, but we do have certain common interests. Remember how much help the Iranians are giving us in Afghanistan, not because they like us, but because it's in their interest to have an Afghanistan that's not controlled by the Taliban, that doesn't send, lots of drugs into Iran.
And Lawrence, very quickly, you've told us what you think the president should do. What do you think he will do?
I think, unfortunately, he is going to surge and basically double down his bets, probably relieve General Casey from command and blame him rather than taking the blame himself.
Lawrence Korb, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Nice to be with you.
Iraq strategy.